viciously whipped his little dog until it lost consciousness and collapsed, then cursed loudly as he threw the poor animal by the roadside. Fortunately, it was discovered by a passing grandfather and grandson. Jahan recognized it as a Belgian cattle dog and muttered that its owner must be an ignorant man who had no respect for life. Nello begged his grandfather to take the dog home, saying he'd be happy to share his food with it. So the little dog went home with them, but it was too weak to even eat. Nello feared the dog might die, but Jahan calmly cooked a pot of meat broth for it and told Nello that what it needed wasn't just food, but love. Nello then made a necklace out of leaves and prayed that the god of life would show mercy. Miraculously, the little dog recovered. Jahan knew it wasn't the necklace, but rather his grandson's devoted care, yet he still joked that he wanted a necklace like that too. They named the dog Patrache. Patrache's arrival brought much joy to the grandfather and grandson, but Jahan was getting old, and his health was fading day by day. The two of them made a living by selling milk, but before long, Jahan could no longer stand up, which meant they couldn't make deliveries anymore. They began to worry about how they'd survive. To help his grandfather recover, Nello also gave him a handmade necklace. Unfortunately, their landlord Stevens showed up right then to collect rent. Nello handed over all the money they had and promised to make up the rest soon.
Sadly, patience is one virtue I do not possess.
Patrache quietly watched everything unfold. The next morning, Patrache woke up the sleeping Nello and jumped onto the cart. It wanted to help sell milk. Nello was overjoyed. With Patrache's help, he could continue delivering milk. Patrache worked so hard that even Nello struggled to keep up. Kind passersby would often lend a hand and help them push the cart. Thanks to Patrache, they quickly finished their deliveries. Every time they delivered milk, Nello would stop by the square to look at a statue of Rubens, the famous painter, who had been his mother's idol. The painting was the only thing she had left him. One day, a passing artist noticed Nello. They got along really well, and the age gap didn't get in the way of their conversation at all. Michel grew fond of Nello. When he found out the boy loved to paint, he planned to take him to see Rubens' artwork, but only the upper class were allowed inside. Michel told the gatekeepers Nello was his friend, and just like that, Nello stepped into the church of his dreams. He had never entered such an elegant place before. Nervous, he stayed hidden in a corner, quietly waiting to admire the art. But just as the priest drew back the curtain, Patrache burst in, dragging the milk cart and accidentally knocking over the donation box. The priest thought they were trying to steal from it and rushed toward them in fury. Nello had no choice but to flee the church with Patrache. They had barely caught their breath when another problem arrived. Patrache's original owner showed up, demanding the dog back. Seeing the cruel man, Patrache growled fiercely. Nello told Patrache to run quickly. Enraged, the man pulled out a knife, intending to hurt Nello. Luckily, Michel appeared just in time and knocked the knife from his hand, but the man grabbed a nearby machete and swung it at Michel. At the last moment, Patrache leapt forward and tackled the man down the steps, and the man lost his life. To make up for Nello's regrets, Michel invited him to visit his home. There, Nello became lost in thought as he gazed at a self-portrait. Michel told him it was painted by a gifted student, but because she came from a poor family, she never became a great artist. The adult world was filled with bias and selfishness. What mattered most to the public wasn't talent, but background. Crushed by the pressure of social status, Michel hadn't been able to help her, and soon after she vanished without a trace, leaving Michel overwhelmed with guilt ever since. Nello brought out one of his drawings, hoping Michel could offer some guidance. Michel was surprised, though the sketch was a bit rough. It revealed Nello's exceptional talent. With just a little training, he believed Nello could create truly outstanding work. Nello asked if he could work for Michel while learning from him, and Michel happily agreed. However, he was about to leave on a long trip. He reminded Nello to carefully observe the world around him, saying an artist's greatest inspiration comes from his eyes. Then, Michel left for Rome. Years passed. Nello never forgot Michel's words. He continued refining his craft with determination, dreaming that one day he too might become a great artist like Rubens. When Michel finally returned, Nello had grown into a handsome young man, and so had his art. Michel was amazed and encouraged Nello to start learning oil painting. He even gifted him paint and brushes, things Nello had always dreamed of but never dared to ask for. Michel taught him how to mix colors, and Nello quickly grasped the technique. Michel then suggested that Nello enter a painting competition, but Nello hesitated. He didn't believe he had what it took to win.
The first step to winning is believing you can win. Of course you can win, Nello. Rubens himself was older than you when he started. That the winner gets 1,000 silver francs and a scholarship to art school?
When he heard the prize was 1,000 francs, both Nello and Petrache lit up with excitement. It could change their lives and ease his grandfather's hardships. Nello ran straight to the woods to tell his best friend the good news. That friend was Aloise, the girl he often painted. They had grown up together, inseparable. Aloise modeled for Nello for free, and Nello would do anything to make her smile. As they got older, their friendship quietly blossomed into something deeper. But Aloise's father, Nicholas, noticed their budding affection. He demanded that Aloise stay away from Nello. After all, Nello came from poverty, and worse, his dream was to become a painter. Everyone knew most painters couldn't even afford to eat. Still, Aloise would sneak away to visit Nello, bringing him and his dog homemade cookies. In return, Nello gave her his latest oil painting. He even took her to see a circus show. After reading the stars, the astrologer declared that Nello was destined for greatness, and that the two of them shared a fated bond, hearts beating in unison as if they had known each other in a past life.
In this life, you will finally find true happiness.
The astrologer gave Nello a ring, and he gently slipped it onto Aloise's finger. He didn't fully understand what it meant, but he thought the ring was beautiful, and knew Aloise would love it. They laughed and danced, so happy that they lost track of time. When they woke up, Nicholas had found them and furiously scolded Nello.
You're thoughtless and irresponsible, Nello. Aloise is our life, and I won't let you jeopardize that. You understand me?
Aloise picked up Nello's drawing as her father dragged her away. After that, Nicholas locked Aloise in the house, forbidding her from seeing Nello again. One day, as Nello passed by, Nicholas called him over. He claimed Nello's painting was terrible, but his wife and daughter loved it. He offered Nello a silver coin to buy the painting, but Nello refused. On the way home, Nello regretted it a little. He could have improved their living conditions with that coin, but even so, he couldn't bring himself to sell the painting. And just like that, a pure and beautiful bond was ruthlessly severed by a prejudiced father. His wife, Anna, couldn't understand Nicholas's actions. After all, Nicholas himself had once been a poor young man.
This boy dreams of nothing but being an artist. What kind of future is that? I turned your father's simple farm into a prosperous mill.
Perhaps, from a father's view, he meant well, but in doing so, he crushed the most beautiful memory in his daughter's heart. On Aloise's birthday, Jahan made her a ceramic doll, but Nello said he didn't want to go, because he wasn't a wealthy man. However, when he passed by her house and saw how sad she looked, he glanced at the uneaten cookies she had given him and decided to bring her the gift anyway. He climbed a ladder to her window, and when she saw him, Aloise was overjoyed. They never realized how painful it could be just not to see each other. Nello promised he would enter the painting competition, and once he won, everything would change. Then he kissed the girl he loved. But he didn't know that this simple gesture would lead him into darkness. That night, Nello was awakened by shouting. Aloise's family barn had caught fire. He and Jahan rushed to help fight the blaze. In the chaos, Jahan fell, but insisted on helping, wanting to do whatever he still could. Eventually, the fire was put out. But when Nicholas saw the clay doll in his daughter's arms, he assumed Nello had started the fire in revenge.
Could do such a thing? People will go to any lengths for revenge.
I was in bed when the fire started. I brought the puppet, but that was all.
Proof! There you have it. There is your proof.
The despicable Stevens fanned the flames from the side, and Nicholas, refusing to hear a word from the grandfather and grandson, raised his hand and smashed the ceramic doll to pieces. Jahan knew it was useless to argue anymore. From that day on, no one bought their milk. Things got even worse. Jahan passed away from the injury, leaving Nello completely alone. The only thing his grandfather left behind was a letter from Nello's mother. Soon it was time for the painting competition. Nello had carefully prepared his entry, but he arrived late. The judges initially refused to make an exception. Fortunately, when he saw Nello's stunning painting, he finally agreed to accept it. That night, Stevens returned once again to collect rent, but Nello had already spent all his money on his grandfather's funeral. He told Stevens that if he won the painting competition, he'd have enough to pay what was owed. But Stevens showed no sympathy. He insulted Nello, saying he was just as foolish and naive as his mother.
My mother was a great woman.
Then he seized the painting Nello's mother had left behind and warned him that he had, until the end of the day, to leave. Everything in the room would be kept as payment. Once again, Nello lost his home. He and Patrash had no choice but to wander the streets. When a baker dropped a piece of bread, Nello bent down to pick it up, only to have it stepped on first. After checking to make sure no one was looking, he quietly picked up the bread, and the first thing he did was give half of it to Patrash. That day, the winners of the painting competition were to be announced. Nello arrived at the church with his final shred of hope. To his surprise, the awards were being presented by Michel, the very man who had once taught him how to paint. Throughout the ceremony, Michel looked restless, clearly uncomfortable. He tried to pass the duty to someone else, but the mayor insisted that he present the award himself. Michel stood and began by praising Nello. He said that Nello, like his mother, was a true artist, and without people like them, the world would be a sorrowful place. Nello listened from the audience with joy in his eyes. Then the winner was announced. The painting was titled My Father, the Mayor. The truth was plain. The entire contest had been rigged for political gain. The winner was none other than the mayor's son, and the mayor himself had hosted the event. Michel only had one vote. He couldn't change the outcome. Nello's world collapsed. It was over. He had nothing left. As he trudged through the snow, Patrash suddenly spotted something. It was a wallet, packed full of money. It belonged to Nicholas Aloise's father. He had planned to use the family's savings to repair the barn, but had lost the wallet while looking for a carpenter. Nello returned to Aloise's home to return it. To thank Nello, Anna invited him to stay for dinner, but Nello only asked for a cup of warm milk for Patrash. He asked Anna to tell Nicholas the wallet was found by Patrash and that he hoped Nicholas would take the dog in. Anna told him to wait. Dinner would be ready soon. But Nello slipped away quietly. He knew Nicholas didn't want him there. His final wish was that Patrash could have a safe place to stay. Not long after, Nicholas returned home in a foul mood, and when he saw Patrash in his house, he immediately tried to kick him out. Anna couldn't take it anymore.
Here's your money. Take it. Nello may never amount to much, but you're lucky he's such an honest boy.
And at that moment, the maid finally spoke up.
He didn't do it, sir. Nello didn't cause the fire.
She revealed a shocking truth. Stevens had threatened her. If she told anyone what she knew, she'd lose her job. Nicholas finally realized he had wrongly blamed Nello all along, so he went to Nello's home, only to find it completely emptied out. In truth, Nello had lost his home long ago, and now he could only wander aimlessly through the heavy snow. At last, Patracia found Nello curled up in a corner of the street. They quietly slipped into the church, where Nello hoped to see Rubens' painting one last time before he died. With excitement, he pulled back the curtain, only to find that the church was too dark to see the magnificent artwork. Even with a candle, it was too dim to make out the painting, so Nello used the candle for warmth and decided to wait until morning to admire it. But the church was colder than he expected, and in the end, Nello didn't make it to sunrise. The candle went out too. A ray of sunlight poured through the window, slowly lighting up Rubens's painting. Thankfully, Nello woke up. He finally saw the masterpiece he had longed for, and standing beside it, the late Master Rubens himself. To his surprise, Rubens had also seen Nello's paintings.
And I can't blame you. You want to be accepted, Nello. What you want, all men seek. In 200 years from now, when people will admire our paintings, you really think anyone will remember that silly contest?
Rubens's words gave Nello great inspiration, and even more unexpectedly, Rubens actually knew Nello's mother. Just as Nello was puzzled, he turned around and saw himself and Patracia lying on the ground. Suddenly, his mother Mary appeared. He ran into her arms, experiencing for the first time a warmth he had never known. Aloise's family held a funeral for Nello, unwilling to believe that heaven could treat such a kind angel so cruelly. At that moment, Nello was already reunited with his mother and grandfather in the sky, watching everything from above, filled with sorrow over his short life. Maybe the director felt pity for Nello too, because the ending revealed that he wasn't actually dead. The villagers found him just in time, though he clearly remembered everything he saw in the afterlife. He told Michel his mother's name, and that's when Michel finally realized the boy he admired was actually his own son. Mary had kept this secret until her death to protect Michael's reputation, knowing that having a child with a woman of low status would have ruined his life. Only now did Michel understand the painful price Mary had paid for love. When Jahan passed away, he left behind a letter from Mary, which said, "The day my son was born was the happiest day of my life. It showed me that true happiness doesn't come from wealth or status, but from within our hearts. Wealth may ease our hardships, but it will never fill the emptiness inside us. Real happiness is something everyone can easily have, yet sadly, almost everyone turns a blind eye to it.